All right, Doc. You got some good questions today from the public.
Yep.
We always get some good questions. You want to go ahead and...
Sure.
Okay, cool.
So the first question is, hey Doc, love your videos. Thank you. Featured on Cutler TV. I've dabbled in gear for quite some time, took a 6-year break, and my cycle has been roughly 100 milligrams of testosterone cypionate every other day. I simply enjoy microdosing. I had to chuckle at that one. That's microdosing. 100 milligrams every other day is microdosing now. I'm about to hit week 12, and I want to keep all my gains from the hard work I put in. I've got Arimidex coming, but I would rather just run Anavar for a few weeks. I have every intention of cycling Ibutamoren with Estrogen after Anavar. What dosage would you recommend? I want to keep climbing, or at the very least, keep my gains. Thanks in advance, Doc. So, again, guys, ladies, I got to be careful. I can't practice medicine over the internet here. So, specifics I can't do because everyone's different. I can give you some generalizations, and please take them as such. So that I'll do. I've already made a comment, and I don't mean to be saying anything that would be pejorative is not the right word, but I don't mean to denigrate anybody but I'm teasing, because a replacement dose is roughly, again, I talked about individualism, but on average about 200 milligrams of testosterone cypionate per week. So 100 milligrams of cypionate every other day is certainly much more than a replacement dose. Now, maybe the implication here is that this is your cycle, and it is, right? So that's what he's saying. It's a cycle. Interesting about that, a quick comment is, there's only so much you can get out of testosterone. We talk about there's only so many receptors that are there to activate. The analogy I use is, to add more unleaded fuel, or unleaded is not the right word, to add more 87 octane is not necessarily going to give you more of what you might be looking for, more muscle gains, more stamina, a better outlook on life, whatever it might be that you're getting from using testosterone replacement therapy. Consider using an anabolic steroid, for example, if your intention is to gain more muscle. Adding more of the 87 octane would not be the same as adding 97 octane, or using 97 octane exclusively, right? Because to write out the analogy, if you're using 87 octane and you use an equal amount of 97 octane, you're going to net out at the middle there, right? And I know in the earlier days, my era of bodybuilding, if you will, although I've never been a bodybuilder per se, but 30 years ago, guys were not using a base, we call it now, testosterone. They were just using whatever anabolic was available, or the ones they wanted to use, and that was it. And I would argue what I'm arguing here, because why would you want to dilute your 97 octane with some 87 octane, right? So anyway, that said, a lot of guys will tell me, no, but still, I do better using 300 or 400 milligrams of testosterone cypionate than I do 200. And I don't disbelieve them. There are some studies, there aren't a lot, because we don't do that kind of study, but showing that 600 milligrams of testosterone cypionate can still give you better effects, and effects meaning typically muscle gain, the sense of well-being, anyway, some of the others that people are generally looking for than the 200, again, using 600 over 200, as long as you're controlling some of the substances that can be converted from excess testosterone, such as excess estrogen, excess dihydrotestosterone. So, and you're watching for an H&H that doesn't go too high, the hemoglobin hematocrit don't go too high. So that said, again, I don't mean to pick on anybody. I'm just saying that's not a small dose. But again, used as a cycle, one of my considerations would be to consider using an anabolic, preferably under the supervision of a physician who knows what he's doing with those, and completely legally, etc. You state here, I've got Arimidex. I'm curious, when you're doing that much testosterone, why you haven't been using Arimidex to date, unless you are using some other form of estrogen modulator, in the meantime. The implication here, though, is that, or I'll just run Anavar for a few weeks, because Anavar doesn't convert to estrogen. I get that, but again, my point is still, whenever you're using testosterone, with very few exceptions in my practice anyway, and I've talked to other physicians too, it's rare that you find a patient that even with just 200 milligrams, I say just compared to this, of testosterone cypionate a week, you won't need something to modulate the estrogen downward, because at least keep it within normal limits, which is typically anywhere from 35 to 39 picograms per milliliter. So just again, a tip, we've probably talked about it many times before. As far as using Ibutamoren, it is a peptidomimetic or a secretagogue, however you want to put it, that is wonderful at getting your pituitary to create more growth hormone. I have seen it work as well or better than any of the other secretagogues. The equivalent IGF-1 in laboratory assays of someone using, say, 3 to even 4 IUs of exogenous growth hormone. The drawback to using Ibutamoren, or MK677 they call it sometimes, is it can create a lot of hunger. The dose that is typically recommended is about 25 milligrams. You can get it in 12.5 milligrams from certain pharmacies, compounders, and you should always take it right before bed, with the idea being that you can sleep through any potential hunger. If you take Ibutamoren, for those that were taking, like the GHRP 2 and 6s are no longer available as of I think last May.
Really?
Pharmacies, the FDA said you can't do those anymore, so those aren't available. But I mention those because those also created hunger.
Yes.
It works through ghrelin and the same mechanism, ghrelin activation, as does smoking pot. The creating the munchies. So if you take the Ibutamoren right before bed, you can typically avoid that. With some people, though, I mentioned the 12.5 milligram dose because they'll be hungry 24/7 with Ibutamoren, so we cut back the dose a little bit, and hopefully we still get treatment results, meaning elevated growth hormone / IGF-1. But I would start with 25 milligrams. Ostarine, I've said it a bunch of times, I'm not a big fan.
Yeah.
Juice is not worth a squeeze. Too many side effects for what you get and could get with things that are legal and obtained, albeit through a prescription, but monitored by a physician, that don't have as many side effects and again do a better job than Ostarine. I made comments about why I think Ostarine is popular. Again, freedom, I get it, all that stuff. Registered libertarian, but anything worth doing is worth doing right. I would choose something better than Ostarine. And that's it, right? That's for the Anavar. In terms of dosing, that depends. I mean, everyone's different. I would start with the lowest dose possible. I think it's been a while since I looked at the latest recommendations, looking at a PDR or something like that, which is a sales tool anyway. But typical daily dosages for males are anywhere from as low as 20 milligrams, which is rare. It's usually 30 milligrams, and typically prescribed in 10 milligram tablets or capsules, because the half-life of Anavar, which by the way we should call it oxandrolone, because Anavar is not made anymore. That was an old brand name, but I know people think of that like they think of a Kleenex, tissue paper. Everyone thinks, Kleenex, you mean tissue paper, But 10 milligrams 3 times a day, because the half-life's roughly 9 hours. But the dosages I've seen also from some of the universities, 25 milligrams twice a day I've seen. Wow. It seems to me to be a lot for oxandrolone, but they're doing well with it and with no side effects. So hope that helps.
He wants, based on the questions, it seems to me like he's hoping to use the Anavar as sort of a PCT protocol or like a bridge or something like that.
That's a total waste of time. If that's what he's referring to.
I think that's what
Anavar for a few weeks is a bridge. First of all, it's oral and it's a good anabolic. You might feel the results sooner than roughly 6 weeks, but again, if your idea is post-cycle therapy, you're trying to get your testicles up and running again, to further suppress them with just a different substance is not.
You're just extending the cycle.
You're not doing anything.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So if that's a question raised, and I appreciate that. Then better to ask your physician to help you with something like HCG, human chorionic gonadotropin. It acts as an analog to luteinizing hormone, which will tell your testicles to start producing testosterone again.
Yeah, because he's concerned about keeping his gains in the question. So that's why I'm.
So and it eases the transition as well as helps preserve the gains to get those testicles up and running again.
That's right.
Get those up and running, and then Oh, and now it makes more sense what you're saying, because that's the reason for the Arimidex then.
That's right.
So that you also suppress your estrogen, so your pituitary says, oh, okay, low T and low estrogen, we'll go ahead and send our own signal.
Yeah.
I would use the HCG, as I always recommend, prior to coming off of the replacement therapy, the anabolic cycle, whatever it is. So you make sure those, I call them diesel engines, which are harder to restart, make sure they're up and running again, so that when the gas engine, that pituitary, starts sending a signal, the testicles are ready to receive that and start producing.
Yeah.
So maybe 3 to 6 weeks before coming off of whatever you're going to stop, start with the HCG, and then whenever you're ready to pull the HCG, continue with the estrogen modulator, whether it's Arimidex or tamoxifen, so that the pituitary gets a little jump start, and then gradually just get rid of that. You should be back to your usual self.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Doc.